So good morning. I think we're going to spend the next half an hour to 45 minutes talking about a very important aspect of doing business. And that's really about how do you take your strategy to the market. It's a well-known fact that organizations spend a great deal of time, effort, resources, and so on in building strategies that are going to get them business success. But we all know what happens with strategy right after that. And so, my effort is going to be to put a structure around it and see how we could apply that structure to the specific business that you're in. Before I go there, just a little bit about Strat2 Results. We're a company that's focused in two areas broadly. One is sales operations, and the other one is sales execution. We find that a lot of organizations spend a fair amount of time on building great sales teams, but don't put enough effort behind building a good sales operation, or for that matter, a good sales execution framework. I'm going to take a lot from what my real world experience tells me, plus what we do as a company, and help you try and understand how we are able to drive some non-linear results with many of our clients. I've taken the liberty to put some examples here. We worked with a large industrial automation company. Now we've been working with them for the last 3 years, and for the last 3 years, every year we've been able to help them execute their strategy to arrive at 2x growth of what the market is doing. In a different area, we worked on customer satisfaction and net promoter scores for Europe's largest manufacturing company, engineering company. And we were able to take their score up in the first year from 19 to 43, and in the second year from 43 to 57. So some good nonlinear growth in customer satisfaction there. Just to give a flavor of what we've done on the manufacturing side, we were able to work with an organization that's the Indian unit of a US auto major, 6 plants across the world. And it had some interesting challenges with respect to profitability and viability as an operation. It was the smallest, least profitable, most expensive unit across the planet. And we were able to work with them to get them up to their global standards of acceptable profitability, and the company's been doing, and the unit has been doing reasonably well in the last 2-3 years. That's just a snapshot of what we do as a group. Now, I just want to get into setting the context of what the primary objective of today's session is. All companies will organize to get results, and many of the organization structures look like the one that you see on this pyramid. The top is narrow, the bottom is heavy. Most people are working at the bottom of the organization. All strategy gets built at the top of the organization. Usually, we find about only 2% of people in the organization spend any time building strategy. And I'm saying this with a great deal of experience, both my own in the corporate world as well as a consultant, where I worked with over 40 organizations. This seems to be the trend. Not too many people are involved in developing strategy. The rest of the organization really is responsible for taking that strategy to market. That's usually there's a 4-step approach. I think usually your strategy is built with the objective of improving something, whether it's profitability or reducing cost or increasing revenue, increasing market share. There's so many areas that you work in, and then that strategic priority gets filtered down to the organization with a great deal of communication through emails, company meetings, etc. It's at that point that a lot of issues come to bear, because until the teams that are supposed to execute the strategy actually buy into that strategy, and individuals buy into that strategy, you're not going to convert that into a regular working culture. Essentially, what we see very often is that just because the people at the top know what needs to be done, it doesn't mean that people in the middle or at the bottom of the organization actually understand what needs to be done, or that they will do it. And that's been an interesting area of work for us for some time. Go-to-market plans are similar, because go-to-market plans actually look at the top to bottom of how a strategy for a company, be it market share increase or cost reduction or whatever it is going to who is it going to go to? Which market is it going to? Who is it going to address? What specifically needs to be done? What messaging has to be done, and who needs to do what? That's what a go-to-market plan is. So I just wanted to set this this baseline before I move on. I'm actually very fascinated by Dr. Ramcharan. Many of you would have heard of him. Dr. Ramcharan is a management guru, and he was also a coach to GE CEO for many, many years. He's an author. He's written many books. One of the areas that he excels in is writing about execution and talking about execution. And here's the line that I find really, really fascinating. Dr. Ramcharan believes that he will take second-class execution over a first-class strategy any day. He says it doesn't matter what your strategy is, or rather what the quality of your strategy is. If you're not executing well against it, you're not going to get to meet your strategic objectives, no matter what how good the strategy might be. So we'll just dive into how we go about it. Our subject today is taking a strategy to the market, and the context that I'm working in, the context I'm working on, especially because we're talking about taking a strategy to market, is largely about what happens in a sales to marketing environment. This is a slide that has a lot of stuff on it. I just urge you to look at the at the pie in the center, and it talks about 4 big elements when you're taking any strategy to market. The first is, what do you know about the market? The second is, which part of that market that you know about do you want to address? The third part is, how are you going to address the part of the market that you've decided that you're going to address? And the fourth is, how you're going to maximize the returns from it. Those are the 4 big things. So there's a lot of detail around it in the 4 boxes, but the one that we really want to focus on today is, if there is a strategy that you want to execute, what do you need to do to go to market with it? Because that's the narrow purpose of what we are discussing today. Fundamentally, let's understand what is a go-to-market plan. You've got a business. In that business, you've probably got a product, you've probably got a service, you've probably got a few other things that that you have to sell. You're eventually going to sell that to a customer. Now, between your business and reaching your customer in a way that the customer finds value in what you're trying to sell, and the customer will buy what you need to do, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. Let's say that's a strategic action plan. In a go-to-market sort of a situation, there are really 2 key pillars to any strategic action plan. And the first one of those is, how are you going to reach your customers? And the second one is, what are you going to tell them, right? So that they will make a decision that's favorable to your business. The outreach piece is fairly traditional in the sense that there are really 3 things that stand underneath outreach. What's your sales structure? Who are your salespeople? Where are they positioned? How are they going to reach out to the market? What's your marketing? How will the message go out to the people that that you've decided to target as your people, as your potential customers? So you've got marketing that's taking the message out. You've got sales that's reaching out to a few customers. And when the customer decides to buy, how are they going to get, or how are you going to deliver, what they have decided to buy? And that's the distribution piece. What's your network? How easily accessible is it to the people that want to buy it? What are the different variants of distribution? Can people only get your product, or can they also get some value around it in the form of a solution, or in the form of a service, or in the form of some kind of integration with what they already do? So what's the strength of the distribution? That's the outreach part. The second part is, right, so you've said what you had to say. You've reached the customer in some form, either directly or through a distributor. You've given some additional value around your product. But why should it be your product? And that's where the value proposition really comes in. I think it's important to understand that we are not just in a market. That in that market there are customers, and amongst those customers there are some valued customers. In other words, those who are willing to pay money for the products or services that I provide. Why do they do that? They do that for well, obviously there's a need, but beyond the need, they will see value in a certain set of things. Pricing is one of them. What's the what's the kind of budgeting I need to do for this? What is the brand promise you're giving me? In other words, if I have to do business with you, then how can I be confident that you are the kind of partner that I want to work with, or you are the kind of vendor that I want to work with? What's the brand promise? In some ways, in a B2C kind of environment, it's a bit like, why do you go to see a movie at a PVR by paying 300 rupees for a ticket, whereas you could see the same movie, the same product at another theater for 70 rupees? It's because the brand promise that PVR gives you is something that you actually, aspire to, or that's something that you would like to have, as opposed to the 70 rupee theater that doesn't give you that experience. Right? And that brings me to the point of competition. What's the competition doing? Do they have a better offering? Do they have a better value proposition? And at the end of the day, as a customer, am I going to get as close a solution to what I want? Is the product or service that you're offering me an exact solution to the problem that I have? If I can get close to that, then there's obviously high level of delight. All these components will go into building a go-to-market plan. This is the high-level view of what needs to get into the go-to-market plan, right? Why do you need one? Well, again, it comes to the point of who's your customer, what's your market, and what's your product. If these things don't have a clear match between them, or rather, if the customer's solution or the need of the customer does not closely match the solution that you're taking to the customer, there is very little likelihood that the customer is going to buy. I mean, that's conventional wisdom. But and that's the reason why you need to put a good, robust GTM plan. We'll get into what are the components of a GTM plan, how you build it a little bit later. But I just want to talk to you about why do you need to have a go-to-market plan? Well, the first thing it does is it's certainly going to reduce time to market. If you go into a forest and start spraying bullets, you can hope that you're going to hit a partridge. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But if you specifically go to a spot where there are some of those birds and you target it specifically, there's a higher chance that you're going to get a result in a much faster time. So it reduces time to market. It reduces costs. Those are two things that that certainly will get addressed by a GTM. Because a GTM is built in a modular kind of fashion, it's very easy to do things when something changes on you. For example, a competitor introduces some new kind of a product, or a competitor increases increases the value proposition of their product to their end customer. How do you respond to that? Because you've planned the GTM in a very modular kind of fashion, and you clearly know some things. For example, who's your customer, what's your value, what's your message, where is your customer buying this stuff, and so on. You're able to go and specifically address a GTM in a modular form, rather than having to change a large, broader strategy, which inherently takes much more time to do. That's fundamentally why people build GTM plans. Let's go in and see what are the three key constituents of your GTM plan. I think that's important. The first is customers. Obviously, you want to sell something to customers, so you need to know what's your target market, who are your customers. Both these things need to be part of the GTM plan. The second thing that's part of your GTM plan is your channel. In other words, where do your customers go to buy? Once you've identified what your market is and who your customers are, then you also need to know where are they going to buy whatever it is that they buy. And the third, of course, is your value proposition or your product or service. And here are some things that that need to be an integral part of your GTM plan. What do you sell? What are you going to charge? And what's the value that your customer gets from whatever you sell, and the price that you charge them? So these are three key constituents that's inside of your GTM plan. I just want to take a short detour from the structure and the way these things are done, and talk about a company that's been incredibly successful and is well known globally for its success. And I'm picking a small part of what they did. Of course, their strategy is much broader, but one of the key things that helped Southwest Airlines become who they are is this. Southwest Airlines was a late entrant into the airline market in the US. In fact, the whole category of low-cost airlines was a late entrant. I mean, the full-fare carriers have been around for a long, long time. And the full-fare carriers typically addressed people who wanted to fly from one place to another. That's typically what you would call the aviation market. But when Southwest Airlines came into the picture, they did a very careful analysis of who their customers are, what their market is, what their need is, and they realized that we are not just in a market where people want to fly. We are addressing a specific need. So let's look at how they address that specific need. So who's my target customer? For the full fare airline, the target customer was, as I said, basically anybody who was flying from one place to another. And an economical business model for them was they had what is known as the hub and spoke model, which means that some of the large metro cities where you had large airports were where these people had their hubs. So if you wanted to fly from one small destination to another small destination, you first took a flight from the first small destination into a big metro airport, and then you took a connecting flight to the second small destination. But that's not who Southwest Airlines was targeting. Southwest Airlines was targeting local customers. They were targeting customers who were in the smaller cities because the people in the metros were already using United Airlines or Delta Airlines or any of the other big airlines. In fact, only 20% of Southwest Airlines customers were people who were connecting through metros. And so if they really wanted to address people who were in these smaller locations and who were also sensitive to price, they had to come up with a go-to-market strategy that basically said, we're going to create point-to-point routes. And so you find that it's hard to find a Southwest hub. You'll find Southwest flying from one point to another point, but hardly coming into the large airports unless they're flying on routes where they're servicing 20% of their customers who are connecting. And that's how a go-to-market strategy or a go-to-market plan actually ensures that you're hitting the right places quickly and with the highest possible impact. So I just wanted to take that little interlude and go out and have a brief discussion about how this works for a real business. Now, before we begin on what are the different steps of creating a go-to-market plan, I think there are three things we should be very clear about. The first thing is, where are we now? The second is, where do we want to go? And then the third, which is really what which is the core, the operational part of your go-to-market plan, is what do you need to do strategically to get you there? I think what's really important here is to ask the right questions, but more importantly, ask them in the right order. And you'll see how how we structure that out for you later on in the discussion. The right questions, but more importantly, having them in the right order and stating them out specifically so that there's a great deal of clarity on exactly what you're trying to achieve, with whom and by whom. If you look at the key objectives of a GTM plan, here they are. There's obviously things about what awareness, how many people know about what you're offering, who are your customers, what's the channel, what are the solutions that you have in place, how do you ensure that your brand position gets associated with those channels, and how do you basically make money from the plan that you take out. So keeping those objectives in mind, let's see how you would build a GTM plan using, or rather by answering the right questions and in the right sequence. Right? We believe there are 7 elements to a GTM plan, and you can see them right up there. It goes right from the targeting of the right market to who's the customer in that market that you want to speak to. What should you be speaking to them about? How should you be offering it to them? How should that product be accessible or that service be accessible to that customer? How are you going to make money? And eventually, what's your marketing strategy? How are you going to reach out to people? We used to do this, at least I had a great deal of experience as the CMO of Microsoft in building these strategies. For instance, one of the most vexing questions that we used to face was, when you are a category leader, say for instance in Windows or in the Office product line, how do you build a go-to-market strategy? What's your market, and how do you, who's your customer, and how do you go out and address this? A very interesting thing that came out specifically when we were talking to larger customers of, say, products like Windows and Office was, for the longest time we'd been going there and talking to them saying, well, here's a new feature, or here's a new licensing option, or here's a new payment option. But what we are offering you is essentially the same. And the customer would keep coming back and saying, you know what, I know what Office does for me. I'll buy it whenever I need it. I really don't see why I should upgrade from, say, an Office XP, which Microsoft launched, sometime in the 1990s, to say an Office 2013, which is, which is the current version of Office that's coming in. And then we had to really start saying, I'm looking at the wrong target market. My customer set is okay, but I'm looking at the wrong target market. I should not be going out and saying, I need to sell you a license, and I'm giving you a better option. Nor can I be going out and saying, oh, you know what, your Office license is pirated, and therefore you need to legalize it. What I need to do is to start specifically looking at what are the business challenges people face with content in their business, because Office is essentially a content creation and content management or a content consumption tool. As a result of which, we created a full go-to-market campaign where we said, Office is just incidental. What you really want is a great way in which people can create, collaborate, and share information across the enterprise, irrespective of whether that information is getting created or published or shared on a server, from a database, from an email system, from a workflow system, or an Excel spreadsheet. And when we created a solution that, when we created a value proposition for a certain kind of customer, especially the large customers, that gave them a vision of what they could do with, or how they could use the information that was getting created in their organization, we could clearly see clearly see the value of Office go into a different sort of zone in the eyes of the customer, because before that the discussion was only about feature and pricing. So that's how we were able to build, by using go-to-markets, we were able to build that value proposition for customers. This subject is, if you just go through a process and what the process means, it could end up being a little bit monotonous and dry. So what I've done is that I've taken a scenario and I've created a fictitious organization called @eFlow Solutions. @eFlow Solutions is an IT business that sells into large enterprises, and it basically sells them communication and workflow solutions. So let's take a scenario. Email is email. We all know what corporate email is. Let's say the workflow solution is that target customers have come back and said we have many challenges. Especially one of the challenges is there is absolutely no control over the way purchase orders are released from our organizations. We're selling to large organizations. A typical large organization customer may turn around and say, every department keeps releasing stuff. We have no control over, over the cost that we are incurring. The same vendor comes and sells to different departments, sells the same solution at different prices, gives a different level of service. Or we have no control over, what we are actually spending on infrastructure or on some other part of the business, because there's no centralized finance control over this. So we need a workflow solution. And the workflow solution is as follows. There is an end user who needs to purchase something. And so he raises a requisition, and then that requisition is going to go into a purchase order, which needs to be approved by the end user's department head. It needs to be approved by the purchase guys, and it needs to be approved by the finance guys before it can go back to the end user, and he can release the purchase order to somebody. So that's a scenario that is being envisaged here with eFlow Solutions, market offering. Now, eFlow Solutions says, right, so I have a solution and I know that this is a problem, but what's my target market? After all, for a solution of this kind on the workflow side, the pain point that I'm trying to identify is that of a large organization. And therefore, I'm trying to bridge a gap, or I'm trying to bridge a market need in the large organization space. Therefore, my target market is in that space, but I need to define it a little more clearly. To define that, let's say I need to look at about 5 or 6, 4, 3, any combination of these things that I put down here. What's the pain that I'm trying to solve? And does the kind of organization I'm targeting have that pain? Is there a gap? Is there some solution that that is missing in that space? In this case, there clearly is. Is my business priority aligned with what I'm trying to do here? For instance, if I'm a seller of email and workflow solutions, and this person is looking at a complex database solution, just because it looks like a lucrative proposition, should I be going after it or should I not be going after it? Because it doesn't align with my business objectives. Should I be, do I have the competency to be able to deliver against what the customer is looking for here? Is this customer and the solution accessible to me in a way that I can actually deliver it? And finally, does it have any kind of a potential? So when you start looking at these questions as eFlow solutions, at eFlow solutions, you'd probably be able to home in and narrow down on a customer target that looks something like this. Well, this kind of solution is something that's probably going to be useful only to the top 250 enterprises in the Indian market, and potentially to public sector, because public sector is it's a sector where compliance and processes are have a premium. So as eFlow solutions, I might go in and say, that's my target customer, that's my target market, that's who I want to sell to. There's a huge big market out there of companies that have networks and that have a need for email and that have a need for all kinds of things. But the people who will really see the value of what I'm selling actually sit in the top 250 enterprises or potentially in the public sector space. Now that's a good starting point. I'm not saying that's the only place. It may vary for your business, but for at eFlow solutions, it does seem like this is a good sweet spot to hit, because it has potential. They have money, they have a pain, there is a gap out there. It aligns with the product we've made. We have the competency to deliver it, and this is a market that we can access right now. And that's how that's the first step that that we would recommend in a go-to-market plan. Now, this is all very well. There's 250 top enterprises and public sector. That's who we want to talk to. But these are company names, and so we need to be clear about a few things before we go in and start tapping into these organizations. And that's where we start identifying the target customer. For example, whose need in the organization are we addressing? What is the experience that you want to create for those people? Because today, there are a lot of solutions that may come in that area, but if you can create a superior work experience or value experience for customers, that makes all the difference. Let me give you a sense of what I'm talking about. In my consulting work, I travel around a great deal, and obviously you stay at hotels, and many of the hotels that you stay at are very, very good. They're all if they're a certain star category, the rooms look the same, the facilities are very similar. Of course, the layouts are different, and the brand names are different, but they are so consistent that even if you're not able to find your room service menu in the room, I can guarantee you'll find it in the top right-hand drawer of the writing table. It's as consistent as that. And that sort of a situation, if you want to create a superior experience, what do? Is it the product, or is it the service around it? I had a very interesting experience at a hotel in Mumbai. I normally carry a book when I travel, and I only get to read that book either on planes or in the evenings, because during the day I'm quite busy with my consulting work with customers, and that doesn't give me the time to read books. So not surprisingly, because I read those books on aeroplanes, my bookmarks are often these boarding passes. And I usually leave the book in the hotel room when I go to my client site. When I come back, the book's there, the boarding pass is there. I just open that page and start reading. But at this hotel, it was different. When I came back in the evening, the book was there, but they had taken the boarding pass out from the page I was reading at, put it at the behind the last page of the book, and they had taken a bookmark that was a branded hotel bookmark, probably not a very expensive thing, maybe 2 rupees, 3 rupees to produce that, and put it inside the page that I was reading at. And what it told me was this: it said, look, all hotels are giving you a great product, but look at the detail at which these guys are looking at, when they are considering you. They see you as a customer who's staying in a premium hotel, and therefore a customer who needs to be pampered. And look at the level of detail that they're going at, right, to help you achieve that. And that's what I mean by, what kind of experience do you want to create for this target customer? Because that customer is, whatever the level of the customer, he has a certain expectation from what he's getting, as a solution to his problem. Of course, you need to be very clear about what problem will you be solving, and what are the internal issues in the organization that your solution can address for your target customer, because many times that's a big issue. Now, if you recall, when we said what's my target market, we said 250 top corporates in the country and the public sector. Now, when we are talking about who we are addressing and what experience and what problem are we trying to solve, we're probably looking at a space like this. So you see a cascade that's building already in your go-to-market plan. And I mentioned the cascade because if you recall, one of the slides that we had earlier said, ask the right questions. These are the right questions, but also ask them in the right sequence. Right. So the cascade that's built for me right now is that the target market is top 250 customers in the corporate sector and public sector, and the target customer in that is the guy who's handling who's the custodian of information interchange in that organization, which is the CIO. The business decision maker whose actual business problem at eFlow Solutions is going to solve, which in this case could either be the supply chain leader, or in this case could be a marketing leader, or somebody who's basically spending money in the purchase order and budget management kind of space. So that business decision maker needs to be on board, and of course the technical decision maker, because in such cases for companies like this, technology decisions are usually going to sit with somebody who has the capacity and the ability to do that. So if I'm going to my top 250 companies and public sector, I need to go to their chief information officers, the BDMs who are going to benefit from the solution that Add eFlow Solutions is selling, and the guys who are going to make the technical decision. Now, I know who's my market. I know who I'm going to talk to in my market. I think it's equally important then to say, what's the positioning I'm going to take with these people? Why would they be interested in what I have to say? And so, I think a key element of that, or rather 4 things that you want your customers to come away with when you're talking to them, whoever they may be, is what do you want them to think about you, right? In other words, do they think of you as competent? Do they think of you as leading edge? Do they think of you as experiential? Do they think of you as a long-term partner, or do they think of you as a fly-by-night operator? What do you really want this customer to think about you or your brand? What do you want them to feel? Do they feel comfortable doing business with you? Do they feel comfortable with you as an individual? Do they feel comfortable with the credentials of your organization? What do you want them to believe? That this is a long-term partner. This solution is something that's going to give me that's going to answer the issues that I'm trying to address. And what do you want them to remember about you? It's what they remember that will eventually come through in the way they in the way these organizations will eventually make their decision, and puts you in a good position if your customers can remember what you had to offer, and they can remember you in a positive light. So let's go build this cascade on brand positioning further. So for Add eFlow Solutions, if my customer is the top 250 corporates and public sectors, CIOs, BDMs, and TDMs, then what do I want these chief information officers, business decision makers, and technical decision makers to think about me and my company? Should they be thinking of me as an end-to-end provider in the space that I'm talking about? Should they be thinking about me as a close-ended, limited sort of opportunity vendor, or should they be thinking about me as an open system that can integrate with anything that they have right now, or that can integrate with something that they might have in the future? Should they see me as a technology leader? Should they see me as a person who has a proven track record in the industry that I'm looking at? And is there some evidence that the cost of ownership and the return on investment that other people have made in my business, or rather other people that have invested in at eFlow Technology Solutions, is a favorable cost of ownership or a favorable return on investment to the kind of business that your customer is? That's the third key step. What's the brand positioning that we want to create here? Now, if you've got this cascade going, the fourth thing is right. So I like what I see about you. I like what I hear about you. I like what attributes you have. I'm the relevant person in the relevant market. What exactly are you offering me? This is when we get down to the nuts and bolts of, what is it that we have on our product. Many of us have spent an incredible amount of time selling products as opposed to solutions or value propositions. I'm not therefore going to spend a great deal of time about, on what these 5 points mean, except that, our ability to create a differentiation is what eventually drives the solution. Is what eventually drives a decision in a world where solutions are becoming more commoditized, on a daily basis as we go along. So I think differentiation in the offering that you make is the real key in whatever go-to-market plan it is that you create for your business. Typical offering type attributes that one would look at is what's the functionality that I'm buying, what's the flexibility of it, will it scale across what I already have, and will it scale along with me as I grow? Is what I'm buying reliable? Is there something to prove that, and so on. So those are the key elements that come in from an offering point of view. I wouldn't worry too much about this because I think most of us already have a fairly good sense of what offerings we are taking to the market. It's the left and right of this in the go-to-market. Targeting the correct market, targeting the correct customer, targeting the right brand proposition on the left-hand side. Those are the key elements on the left-hand side of the offering. And on the right-hand side is, now that I have an offering, I know who my customer is, I know what market I'm going to, and what's my value proposition. How am I going to make sure that my customer can get what he wants? Where is my customer? How do they buy? Where do they buy? What's my opportunity to go out and promote out there? How do I distribute? What is my distribution model? Most importantly, in a situation like this, particularly in B2B high-end selling, are the channels that I have going to fit the need of the customer? Because I have a product, but does the channel provide the service around it that that the customer might need over and above my product? And some of those things actually are like, well, of course, there's distribution, but the more important ones here are people who provide services on top of the product once they, in addition to distributing the product. People who integrate systems, build applications of their own, and basically are out there in the market to ensure availability of the product. So once you found the market, the customer, and your value proposition, and you made the offering, I think it's super important to make sure that that the customer has the ability to access that stuff. While it's not B2B, I have one of the things that really strikes me is how technology has been used for distribution by some companies to make it really difficult for some well-established ones to do business. And it's really about the distribution and the convenience that has been created for customers. The example I'm thinking of, frankly, is you take a company like Walmart. Walmart's the biggest retailer in the world. It's probably the largest business in the world. They've been around for several decades, and they've built a great supply chain. They've built a great outreach model. They will give you over 60 million products in a Walmart store if you can get there, and that's held them in good stead over several decades. But you see how a company like, say, an Amazon has come along and used technology to enhance their distribution. When you think about it, we in India are about 9 or 10% of the world's population, or thereabouts. I can buy a product today on my phone from an Amazon, but I can't go to a Walmart store. Right? And that's really the and that's really the scary part, which is why companies that have been in traditional retail are beginning to look at what are the alternatives they have, how can they tie up with other people that have leapfrogged them on distribution and convenience of availability of the product. To make sure that their products are available to customers where those customers buy those products, and that's really the key element of outreach to the marketplace when you've got the other pieces in place. Then, of course, you got to see whether your business is going to make any money, right? And I think that's that's the key element where the rubber starts hitting the road. It's all very well to create the blueprints of who your market is, who your customers are, and what you're going to say to them, and how they're going to buy. But it's really important for any go-to-market to be very clear about what are the avenues for making money, and how the what are the mechanisms by which you're going to build your budget model to ensure that net of your costs, your business is profitable. In the case of eFlow Solutions, this is potentially going to roll out to a very large number of people in very large organizations, and so it could be a relatively expensive proposition. Companies like this often use techniques to be able to overcome this by building cascades, both in the pricing level as well as in the product functionality. What I mean by a cascade is, you could have a solution that's a full-blown, all features thrown in kind of a solution for all people in the organization, or you could have a subscription-based model, or you could have a per user-based model. You could have other flexible payment options like using some form of credit, for example, leasing of the solution, and so on and so forth. So I think the fifth, or rather the sixth element of your go-to-market is to clearly understand and to clearly articulate how your business is going to make money, provided you sell effectively by being able to distribute to the customers you want to distribute to in the markets that you want to operate in. Finally, of course, how you're going to take this to market, and there are two questions that you need to look at in this space. How are you going to reach the buyers and influencers of your target market? Who are they, and what are the platforms through which you're going to reach them? And the second is, what messages will motivate them to actually purchase those markets? In your GTM plan, it's important to understand where do these people go for advice? Where do these people actually buy similar kind of solutions right now? Who are the service providers that integrate these kind of solutions in? Who are the people out there in the marketplace that help them make these decisions? And how can you influence or reach all of them? So it's important to plan out what kind of events or what kind of engagements you want to create that are the highest impact. There are many, of course. You can see the options right here. I think comprehensive GTM campaigns probably create the best impact, because they're extremely customer and channel focused, and their focus is largely to create the pipeline that you can benefit from when you're going into the selling mode. But equally important are people who influence these decisions. I mean, we often had situations where where we would have technocrats making decisions on behalf of public sector organizations, or technocrats who were on the boards of private organizations that were helping organizations make those decisions. Especially because our target segment here at eFlow Solutions is the 250 top organizations. They will usually have someone out there in the market who's considered an expert in the area that will make those decisions. So when we build our marketing strategy within the go-to-market plan, it's important to consider where our customers are most likely to go to get their inputs. These are the seven elements of a GTM plan. So when you're building your plans, the idea is, ask the questions that you need to ask in each of these categories. Answer those questions. Make sure that you're asking those questions in the right sequence, so that one thing leads to another, and you have a good, solid composite model that you can use to go and build plans that are going to get you the maximum returns from the marketplace. So that's a sum up of of the approach to creating go-to-market plans for the strategy that you have in mind. Mr. Rao, I'm done with the content. I have just one more slide that says how you can reach me. Of course, I'm sure there would be questions, and I'd be happy to take those questions now.